I deal next with a refocused growth strategy for Barbados. Economic growth, the creation of jobs, and the expansion of social and economic opportunities in any society come principally only from two sources: the expansion of existing enterprises and the creation of new ones. Enterprise expansion and creation are driven by two sets of forces as well. The first is sufficiently high levels of sustained demand for goods and services. The second is an enabling business and enterprise culture, which fosters and encourages the existence of efficient enterprises, enables them to realize reasonable rates of return on capital, and which fosters innovation, skill development, and the best management practices as normal business activity. Growth in Barbados has faltered because of the insufficiency of demand for goods and services. It has faltered as well because the business and enterprise culture that exists has stymied competitiveness, efficiency, and innovation. On the first matter, the insufficiency of demand. And since 2008, our party's position has been that given the turbulence in the global market, and with our foreign exchange reserves well in excess of the threshold required for safety, an economy such as Barbados, where over 75% of economic activity is for the local market, such an economy cannot conceive of a growth path that did not allow for increased private spending through tax relief. It is impossible to conceive of any strategy for the expansion of Barbados manufacturing, the growth of non-sugar agriculture, the expansion of micro and small business sectors, all of which are driven largely by domestic demand in the absence of measures to stimulate domestic purchasing power in this country. Increased taxation on a shrinking economy will cause it to shrink faster, and so it has been for Barbados. And the notion that adjustments to personal income taxes cannot be used as an instrument to generate growth has, I think, been contradicted by the new policies introduced in the budget to change the tax bands and to reduce the base tax rate. In 1994, we assumed office with foreign exchange reserves at $384 million. By March 2008, total foreign exchange reserves stood at $2.8 billion. We therefore do not have to be persuaded of the superior merits of an export-led foreign exchange generating approach to growth in Barbados. But given adequate levels of foreign reserves, a satisfactory level of domestic spending, made possible by judicious and continuous income tax adjustments, is crucial to creating conditions for growth in our economy. Increased domestic spending as part of a growth strategy is also one of the reasons why the CLECO issue, from a macroeconomic point of view, has urgently to be resolved. 35,000 persons are affected. Many have put on hold decisions to consume and to invest. There is no doubt that this constitutes a drag on economic activity in our country. Its urgent resolution, in a manner that reconciles the needs of affected investors and policyholders with the need for fiscal prudence, can only help to improve a climate conducive to growth in the country. As regards the need for an appropriate environment that can support the creation and expansion of enterprises, it has to be recognized by all of us that Barbados can be regarded as a classical case of constrained development. It is beyond dispute that in its efforts to generate growth in the economy, government must, in addition to the focusing on macroeconomic environment, must also focus on the laws, regulations, and institutions that can have an impact and indeed provide form and structure to daily economic activity. The challenge which government must successfully resolve is that of acting in the public interest while acting as a facilitator of business rather than its biggest constraint. The Global Competitiveness Report 2012-13 is now to hand, and it ranks Barbados as 44th in respect of overall competitiveness. This ranking, though fourth in Latin America and the Caribbean, is down 2 points from the previous year. Of concern is the fact that inefficient government bureaucracy and the lack of access to financing were identified in the survey of the private sector as the two most problematic factors for doing business in Barbados. These represent very serious constraints on the private sector, especially when taken in conjunction with the loss of preferential market access for exports and the dismantling of trade restrictions that now require businesses in Barbados to compete more intensely for market share at home and abroad. These constraints are even more critical in the service sectors where our main areas of tourism and international business sectors are our major area. Indeed, the negative impact of poor business facilitation has already dealt a cruel blow to our international business sector. According to the CEO of Invest Barbados, during the last 2 years, Barbados missed out on $1 billion in investment and 2,700 jobs in the international business sector. He indicated that the information was based on records which Invest Barbados kept about discussions which they had with companies that expressed interest in Barbados and provide details on the projected investments and jobs which could have been generated. Those investments did not get off the ground for reasons which included slow response to applications for incentives, licenses, and so on, and failure to amend legislation or pass new legislation to meet the needs of the market. There can be no more half measures in promoting business facilitation. While government in Barbados is displaying the symptoms of chronic implementation deficit disorder, other countries are taking deliberate steps to make it easier to do business in their jurisdictions. Indeed, from Rwanda in Africa to the UK, countries are aggressively reforming their regulatory structures to enhance their competitiveness and to make it easy to do business. On the other hand, projects such as the IDB loan-funded Barbados Competitive Project is marked by major delays in this country. Government must make improved business facilitation a key strategy for private sector-led growth. In this and other matters, there must be timely decision-making by government. Inertia is not a substitute for action. Neither is equivocation an option when private sector investment, jobs, and growth are on the line. The lack of focus on business facilitation is perhaps most sharply reflected in the fact that there is no information on Barbados on the Doing Business report, which is produced annually by the World Bank. This report measures and ranks 183 countries on the ease of doing business conditions in their respective countries. According to the 2012 report, the top 5 countries were Singapore, Hong Kong, New Zealand, the United States of America, and Denmark. The leading Caribbean country was St. Lucia, ranked 52nd. We are therefore not in a position to compare our performance for doing business against those of our competitors for trade and development. While we move slowly on our reforms, the United Kingdom, though ranked at number 7 in terms of the ease of doing business, is not prepared to rest on its laurels and has launched several initiatives to, quote, simplify the regulatory system and to free up the private sector's capacity to innovate, to diversify, and to expand. These include a comprehensive review of existing regulations to identify those that can be removed, simplified, or approached in a different way. And additionally, that government has directed that new regulations must be assessed in respect of their cost to business, and they must be reviewed after a maximum of 7 years to, quote, to justify their continuation, rather than simply leaving them on the books. What a change in Britain. I like to remind people that in Britain there used to be a regulation where people had to ring a bell on the cliffs of Dover if to warn about the approach of Napoleon's army. That regulation was abolished with the start of the Second World War. The status quo is not an option. Nothing short of comprehensive reform will suffice if we are to engender private sector-led growth. I propose the re-engineering of government's operations on an e-government platform that will use information technology to flatten government's hierarchical structure, allow for simultaneous processing by different departments, and speed up decision-making. I further propose ongoing review of commercial law and regulations by a public-private sector commercial law commission. And my party is committed to working with the Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Association, the Barbados Entrepreneurship Foundation, and all other private sectors to make Barbados the best place to do business.